Alrighty guys, welcome back to my channel today, and we are doing a brand new Sims 4 speed build today. And so today I am building a large country estate on a 64 by 64 lot in Brindleton Bay, which is a new world that came with cats and dogs. And I have to say that this is my most longest speed build I've ever done in my entire life, because this build took me 11.5 hours to do from start to finish in a span of 3 days. And the first 4 hours were part of a live stream that I did on Twitch, and the rest of the time I spent by myself building for the next 2 days, like landscaping and furnishing the house, the final touches, and that was a lot of fun. And so what I did next is that I wanted to give this build a sense of detail to it, a sense of history, and a sense of style. And so I wanted to make sure that this house was here for like 100 years. It has some history to it. There's also a maid's quarters and a butler's quarter, but those two things are kind of an addition to the build, where someone purchased this lot and added those two things to give their sense of hirees a place to stay while they were at the estate working. So that's what I really like about this build. It gave it history, but it also gave a sense of some renovations to it to give it more a sense of a modern history, but kept the style of the house. And that's what I like about this build. It gives a place of culture, history, and style. And so I want to say that this was my third longest one. So the first one I did was a 8-hour build that took me 8 hours, and it was a build that I did as on a 50 by 50 lot in Willow Creek that was called not called Toontown, it was called Tiny Town, inspired by Toontown, which is that Disney computer game that we played back in the 90s, where I played back in the 90s. I'm not sure about you, but it's actually a Disney theme park in Disneyland in California. No, Disney World. Or is it Disneyland? I don't know. It's in the Disney parks, and I really love Toontown a lot. It gave me a sense of happiness, joyfulness, and sense of being a kid again. And so that's what I wanted to try and do in that speed build. The next one was more of a penthouse build that I did for City Living. I went to Sims Camp for City Living, the expansion pack, and that was a lot of fun, meeting all the gurus and then like building a penthouse with the new styles. And the one thing I did like about City Living is that it had a lot of diversity to it. It gave a sense of culture, a sense of style, and all the new build and buy features that came with the game was more of an awakening to me, where like, okay, we have all these styles. What could I do with it? What could I build with all these type of build and buy items? And so I came up with an entire 3-story penthouse with a balcony on top of it, and it was a lot of fun. But the one thing that happened was I built that penthouse 3 times. So the first time when I got to Sims Camp, we were allowed to, you know, play the game or whatever, and I built the shell of the house like in a span of an hour and a half, I think. But then my computer crashed, and then so I had to go to another computer, built it again for like an hour and a half. That was fun. And the thing at the end of the day, I couldn't take the files home because City Living was still like in beta mode or whatever. And so I was literally determined. I was determined to build that entire penthouse. No matter how long it took me, I was going to finish it. So 9.5 hours to 10 hours later, I finally finished it. So if you guys are part of if you were part of my SpringSquad fam since City Living or way back then from the start of my channel, you all would know that I love clutter, I love plants, and I pay attention to detail a lot. And so when I add a piece of clutter, I'm like, oh, I can add that stuff here, there. I start to scroll, and it gets quite crazy because I generally don't like square houses because it just looks bland and boring. And so I end up adding like more boxes to it to give it more of a definition, to give it more of a sense of style. And that's what I tend to do for my builds, give it a personality. So add more features to it to give it, again, a personality. And I like that stuff. And so this right here is probably my, like this house right here was technically going to be like a small little square house. I wasn't going to make it too big or make it too furnished on the inside because, again, it's a maid's quarters, and I wanted to focus all my attention to the inside of the main house. And so the maid will be living here in the back part. The butler will be living in the back in his little quarter area. So the maid's house and the butler's house is not really furnished to the ability where you can like have a lot of stuff into it. It's quite small on the inside for both of them. and I wanted to keep that the way it is. Since the butler and the maid are technically related, I'm gonna get to the story later, but I'll tell you how they are related, okay? Okay? In a minute. But yeah, so they're related, and they wanted to work together, and they wanted to stay together as close as possible, and they found this job to work at this house estate. And what was I doing next after this build? What was I doing? Oh yeah, so yeah, when I was doing the live stream of this build, I was like, okay, why am I doing all this extra stuff to make this build the way I want it to look like? I don't know. I just like to landscape, and landscaping is the one thing that really makes me, I wouldn't say stands me out from the crowd or makes me unique for it, but I feel like landscaping is the most important to a build, because if you don't have like a good landscaping on a house or on the lawn, it wouldn't look too good unless you're going for that type of style where it's not going to look good, or you have, I don't know, no garden or no front lawn, then it makes sense. But for this lot, the landscaping was the top of the iceberg, like the tip of the iceberg, where it actually makes the build for what it is. And so that's why the majority of my time was basically placing all the plants, the rocks, and terrain painting. And the terrain painting was also the most important for this build. And I did like how I did it, but I feel like I could have done a little bit better with it. I don't know. It's something that I need to work on for the time being for my builds. And I actually got inspiration from a picture that I got off of Twitter from Millennial Sims Builds on Twitter, and he actually posted, I'm not really sure if it's he or she, but they posted on their Twitter this little build, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I get so inspired from their builds, and when I see a build on there, I'm like, okay, I can build that in The Sims. That's totally cool. I can do that. It's totally easy. And I never end up doing it. So I told myself, you're going to do it, you're going to finish it, and you're going to like it. And I never thought I would like it, but I did like the build that I did. And I wanted to probably do more of it, but probably for not that long. And so I'll try my best to do other builds like in The Sims 3 and Sims 4, because I know a lot of people don't really have The Sims 4 or just don't like it and never really just don't play it anymore. So I want to try it and accommodate my other builds to the other games. Like Sims 1, I don't think you can really share your builds. Like, I'm not really sure how you share your builds on the Sims 1 thing. I think there's like a way you can do it, but I'm not really sure how. But the Sims 2 and Sims 3 are pretty easy to share my builds. So I'll try my best in the future to build more houses in those other games, because I want to try and experience The Sims 2 again, like I used to do back in the day when I was like a lot younger, and I enjoyed The Sims 2 the most because The Sims 2 was the game that really made me more happier when it came to a sense of realism, because I used to do machinima videos in The Sims 2, and I made all these type of films, and it was a lot of fun. And the way The Sims 2 worked, it felt like real life to me, because with the university and the nightlife and the way free time and being with family and the apartment life, all that stuff made sense to me because it was like real life. Because I used to live in an apartment when I was a lot younger, and it made sense. And so I never really had a pet, because we had The Sims 2 pets, but never had a pet. And so The Sims 2 really made me happier. It was like my happy place. The Sims 3 came along. I wasn't really into The Sims 3 at first, but I kind of enjoyed it a little bit more as more packs came along, like Showtime and The Sims 3 University and Ambition, stuff like that. And like custom content really made the game more alive to me. And I was a custom content freak addict. It was literally insane. If you saw my external hard drive right now for my Sims 2 download backup folder, you would go, okay, how in the world did your computer not die from all this custom content? And I would tell you, I don't know. I just can't tell you, because I just don't know. I just don't. Because I had over, I think, 50, I think I have over, let's say, over 200,000 files of custom content for The Sims 2, and the mod folder was probably, I think, almost 30 gigs. I think, yeah, almost 30 gigs of custom content for that file size. And it was quite insane. My computer actually kind of ran, but it didn't ran really well, because I was like on a dinosaur computer playing The Sims 2. And the funny part about the computer that my first computer that I had playing The Sims, it only had 4 gigs of RAM. And I'm like thinking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I survive on 4 gigs of RAM with only about, I think, yeah, 4 gigs of RAM, and the storage space was probably, I think, not even like not even 500 gigs, like not even 500 gigs. And it was quite upsetting when I thought about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I survive with only about, let's just say 400 gigs of storage and 4 gigs of RAM? Like, how did I survive? I don't understand. It was quite insane. But then I upgraded to like another computer and that was all fun. And then I switched to another hard drive and that was great. And it was all good in the end. I managed to get everything I wanted when it came to The Sims. And I told my parents, I'm serious about this. And they believed me and they believe in me now. And they support me so well with all The Sims and the cinema making and my business. And it's a lot of fun. And so that being said, don't give up on your dreams. Don't give up on YouTube. If YouTube is like your passion, your hobby, and you want to see where it goes in the next span of like months or whatever, and you want to work really hard and make this a full-time job, then go for it. You can do it. You can definitely do whatever you want if you set your mind to it and you put your goals into place. And that's what I really encourage everyone to do. Plan your stuff out and make sure you have your goals set, that you want to make those your goals and achieve them. And all the goals that I've set myself in the span of like my entire life, since I was like around 13, like 12 or 13, all my dreams have come true. Like I wanted to join show choir for 4 years. I've done that. I wanted to be in all the top choirs in my school. Did that. I wanted to join like about 3 clubs. I did that. I was in 3 clubs in high school. I think it was probably a little bit more than that, but it was totally fine. And I wanted to graduate high school, and I wanted to graduate college. I'm still, college is still not there yet because I'm about to graduate in May. But all my dreams have come true, and my jobs that I've had and that I applied for, I've always gotten, and I like that. My parents have taught me well throughout my 21 years of life, and I encourage you guys to listen to your parents. They mean well. They are just teaching you the ways of life, how to survive and how to do things. And you just listen to your parents because they've been through so much stuff that they don't want you to go through. So definitely obey your parents, learn from them, and learn from their mistakes. Like don't do their mistakes that they've done. So learn from them. Don't do them. Just listen. That's all you gotta do. Just listen to them and you'll be fine. Okay, cool. So we are in the 12th minute of this video. I had recorded this voiceover about 6 times in a row already, and it's totally fine. It's all great. But I think what I'm going to do, I think I'm going to actually tell you the story about my time when I was doing, I'm going to tell you the history of this build actually, because I feel like since like this build's about 25 minutes long, almost 26 minutes, I'm going to talk about this portion of the build until the very end, like towards the screenshots. But I have lots to talk about this build. And when I come up with storylines for my builds or my creative sims, I usually come up with them on the whim as I'm talking. So I don't plan out my storylines ahead of time. Like for my Let's Plays, I do, but for like my builds that I'm doing on the whim, I don't come up with them like beforehand. So yeah, they're all by my memory and my whim and my experience of storytelling in the span of like, I don't know, 8 years of YouTube. It's great, but I really wanted to try my best to see what I could do with this build and the history and all stuff like that. But yeah, so I know someone in the chat of my Twitch chat said that I should give it a sense of history that has been here for like 100 years, and I really adored that because I like how they said make sure this house looks like it's been here for 100 years, but have like 10,000 tons of renovations to it. And so I like that idea, and I wanted to go off with that and see what I could do with it. And so we are going to tell the story right about now. So about 100 years ago, let's just say the year is not 2018, okay? Well, 100 years ago, okay, 1918. No. Okay, yeah, we can say the years right now is 2018. So 100 years ago, in the year of 1918, on March 3rd of 1918, it was like about on a rainy Thursday. I don't know what the day was on March 3rd, 1918. I don't know at all, but we're gonna make up a day. We're gonna say March 3rd, 1918, on a Thursday afternoon around nighttime, like around like 5 o'clock-ish. It was during that time where people were out and about doing their business, doing their little secret business, whatever you want to call it. But it was all great. And so there was this guy named Jared Smith, and he was one of the most wealthiest bachelors in Brindleton Bay, and he was kind of more of a snob. He's a snob romantic, and he has a little bit of a temper, but he means well, and he wants to be able to live his life the way he wants to live it. His parents weren't really there for him when he was a lot younger. His father was abusive, had this like weird society going on back in the day, back in the 1800s, that he wanted his son to take over the business, but his son was like, you know what, I don't want to do it anymore. I can't handle it. Too much pressure. And so what Jared did, he decided to go ahead and make his own business when he was around like 16 years old. And so his father didn't believe in his system or believe in his passion of becoming an entrepreneur. And his father said, you know, you're going to work in my shop. You're going to own the shop. You're going to run it when you and my mom, your mom and I will pass away. And he didn't want to do that. So he decided, you know, move out, do his own thing. And here he is today living his life of luxury. But later on in his life, when he became about 35 years old, around his 35th birthday, he got sick a little bit, and he had a wife and kid. Like, he had about two kids, and his wife recently passed away around she was like 29 and he was like 32, but she kind of passed away abruptly, and it was kind of sad and kind of dramatic. And he only had his two daughters, Sarah and Kaylee. And so they were only around like 3 and 5 years old at the time when their mother passed away, and it was only John. And John was still young. He was like 32, and he didn't know the symptoms of his disease. Like, he was dying from cancer, and it was kind of traumatic for the kids to understand what was really going on, because Kaylee was about 5 and Sarah was only 3 at the time, because they didn't really know. But as they got older, Kaylee was around, like, she didn't go to school, because I think back in the day, girls couldn't go to school. I'm not really sure, but it was during that time when they were mostly homeschooled, and they had a maid or a tutor to come by to just teach them about certain things in life and about in the world. And so when Jared Smith, my gosh, when Jared got sick around 35, he had to go to the hospital. And so Sarah and Kaylee went to the hospital with their housekeeper maid who stayed at the estate to take care of the kids. And so when Jared had actually died, they went into foster care at the time, but the housekeeper kind of took them in as her own to take care of them until they got to a certain age where they could live on their own out in the world. But what happened was the maid had a little bit of a secret, a little bit of an extra secret that she didn't want to get out at the time. It was quite crazy, and let's just say she owed some people some stuff, and it was quite crazy that she disappeared. And I didn't like how it happened, but when Sarah and Kaylee when that happened, it was about 10 years later. So Kaylee was around, she was 18 at the time, and Sarah was only about, I think she was like 7, she was like 16 years old at the time. So they were in that stage of their life where they were old enough, but Kaylee couldn't move out because she didn't have any money and she didn't have a job. And so what happened when their dad had died, they left some money in their will. But Jared's father and mother knew about the kids because they were kind of still technically talking, but they were still in their lives a little bit. So what the parents what their grandparents did, they also put money into their will for their grandkids, but not for Jared because of their relationship. So they decided to take him out the will and leave it only to his grandkids until they kind of turned to a certain age, or until John had died, because their grandparents wanted them to survive without their father, and they knew their father was kind of a strange man. So they decided to leave the money into their name, but not his. And that was kind of upsetting when I found that out, when his parents didn't, like, literally took him out of their will, but only put his kids, and he could not change it. Like, Jared could not change the will because it was their will, so he couldn't change it. And Jared could not take their money because they weren't at that certain age, and they couldn't take the money. He couldn't take the money, even if he could, because it's like the law said you cannot take your kids' money if they're part of a different will. And so that was a little bit of an ordeal that they had to deal with throughout the years. So when Jared died, it was only the kids, and the housemaid kind of abruptly disappeared. Weird things happened to her. Not going to tell you about anything about that, but let's just be real here. Again, she owed some people, and it was quite ugly. So yeah, when Sarah and Kaylee got around, like, when they were like 20 years old, well, Sarah was 20 and Kaylee was like 23 or whatever, turning 23 around that time, they decided to go ahead and live together. So what they did is that they sold the old estate to this, they just put the estate on, not the real estate. It's on the market, and they still owned the property. They could do whatever they wanted until it got sold. But what happened was that the house actually recently, around like the 1918, blah blah blah. I think it was like 1942, around that time, where their estate house actually caught on fire in a recent fire that somehow happened, because Jared had some enemies, and so did the maid. Not going to get into that because it was a little bit extra, but what happened is that they didn't know people were in the house, so the crooks and evil people decided to go ahead and set their house on fire because they were mad at Jared and the housemaid for what they've did in the past, and they owed some people as well. And so when Sarah and Kaylee came back to their house to collect their things, they discovered their house was on fire, and they literally lost everything. I repeat, they lost all their home photos, like all their photos they had taken in the photographs at the local photo keeper shop. They lost all their toys, all their important things that they've had throughout their lives, and they lost everything. And it was quite upsetting and traumatic what happened. But later in the long run, they found out who did it. They went to jail, and they died in jail because, jail is kind of crazy. No, I don't know about that anyway, but seriously, they died in jail. But Sarah and Kaylee decided they're going to move on. They left their town. It was a very small town, but they were very well known. So they decided to go ahead and change their name and leave town and just live a new life with no one knowing them. But when they kind of got to the city of San Myshuno, it was like more of like, San Myshuno wasn't really a very big town. It was still a very small town back in the 1900s where it wasn't that many people, but Penny Pizzazz's like ancestor way back in the day in the 1900s kind of met Sarah and Kaylee, kind of took them in. So technically Sarah and Kaylee are kind of related to Penny Pizzazz in the sense of being adopted, quote unquote, but they signed some papers. It was all legal, and let's just say they were kind of the first social media gurus or whatever. But when Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, like the person who discovered electricity, which is Benjamin Franklin, who discovered electricity, I forget when, but when the first cell phone came along, they were quite old when the first cell phone actually came to be, and it was quite insane. And there were some things that they learned, some things they didn't learn, some things they found out that they didn't want to find out about their father, their housemate, their grandparents. It was a big ordeal, and so it was upsetting, and I just didn't like it. They didn't like it, so they decided to change their lives for the better. But as life goes on, as they get older, they did die a peaceful death, and they had a great legacy. But the funny thing is that Sarah, who is like the youngest sister, found a good job in her later life. She became a politician, and it was really, really great about that. And then when Kaylee got a little bit older, she is actually the great-great-great-grandmother of Penny Pizzazz. So when they changed their name, when they came to America, when they changed their name, because Brindleton Bay is actually technically in America, kind of, sort of, but they traveled around the world, but they were technically born in Windenburg at the time, but they moved to America, and they had their name changed, so they had to change their name again. It was a lot of stuff, but like I said, they are related to Penny Pizzazz, and it's a kind of a big family tree, and I do like it a lot, and it's a lot of family history that they don't want to get into. And since they changed her name, Penny Pizzazz doesn't really know her true history. And that's kind of like, I feel like that's why she became a social media guru, to figure out her past, her future, well, her past and her present, and see who her parents were really about, who were her ancestors and how they came to be, and what her life was like. And so it's kind of cool to figure out that stuff, and I like that a lot. And so it really makes me happy to see people, I don't know, growing as who they are and seeing who they could be in their lifetime. So yeah, that's kind of like the end of the story for the storyline for this house, and how everything came to be from start to finish. Like my rant, my extraness, but you know, it's all great. We all good in the hood. But like I said, I'm surprised to talk for 25 minutes straight in this build, but it's all good. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and leave off this voiceover right here. I hope you guys enjoyed this much as I did. Let me know down in the comments below. As always, I will put this up on the gallery for you guys to download. It's up on the gallery right now. My origin ID is SpringSims, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I will see you guys all in the very next video. Bye!